Have you ever found yourself, pouring all your energy into a relationship, maybe a friendship,
Hmm.
only to feel like the other person is just pulling away?
Oh, absolutely. It's such a common thing.
It really is, right? It's this super frustrating dynamic. It feels like the more you care and the more effort you show, the more distant they actually become.
Mm.
And it happens everywhere: romance, friendships, even work sometimes. That feeling of chasing someone,
Hmm.
it can be just exhausting.
Yeah, completely draining. And look, if that sounds familiar to you, if that resonates, then this deep dive is definitely for you.
Okay.
We're going to really get into why this pattern seems to happen over and over, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it. Some concrete steps.
Good. Actionable steps are key.
Exactly. The mission today really is to help you get back that sense of personal power. Find some inner peace in these kinds of situations. We've got some great material to draw from.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Why does chasing seem to backfire so often? It feels like it should work. You show interest, they respond, but it pushes them away. Why?
It feels totally counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But here's the thing the material points to.
Yeah.
Chasing someone doesn't really win their affection. Often, it actually loses their respect.
Loses respect.
Right.
How so?
Well, it's because the act of chasing, fundamentally, it comes from a place of fear. It could be fear of losing them, maybe fear of being alone, or just that nagging fear of not being enough.
That underlying fear.
Yeah, and that fear,
Yeah.
it gives off a certain energy. It sounds a bit woo, maybe, but people pick up on it instinctively. Desperation, neediness, it signals an imbalance, and that energy, it tends to repel people.
So it's not just like texting too much, it's the feeling behind the texts.
Exactly. It's the why behind the action.
Uh-huh.
And when you're constantly chasing, it subtly lowers your value in their eyes.
Okay.
Think about it. If you're always available, always the one reaching out, always making the effort,
Yeah.
they start to take you for granted. It just happens.
Right. You become predictable.
Predictable and maybe less valuable.
Yeah.
It completely flips the power dynamic. Suddenly they're the prize and you're the one constantly trying to, earn their time and attention. It's exhausting. And it rarely works long term.
Okay, I think a lot of us listening might be wondering now, am I doing this? Am I actually chasing, or am I just being, caring and putting in effort? How do you tell the difference? What are the signs?
That's such a crucial question.
Hmm.
And yeah, the signs you're chasing, rather than genuinely connecting, they can be pretty clear if you're willing to look honestly.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Okay, so are you always the one sending the first text? Are you the one making basically all the plans? Are you sitting there, maybe checking your phone constantly, waiting for replies that take ages or maybe never even come?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The source material puts it really bluntly. It says, that's not love, that's emotional begging.
Wow. Emotional begging.
Yeah.
That hits hard. But it sounds unfortunately accurate sometimes.
It can be, can it? And think about this. When your value seems to come only from your availability, you stop being seen as someone to respect. You risk becoming someone to, use.
That's a tough pill to swallow.
It is. Other signs to look out for. Definitely one-sided effort. You feel like you're doing 90% of the work in the connection. Constant overthinking is another big one. Analyzing every little interaction, every silence.
Yeah, the overthinking trap. Been there.
Right. Or maybe you find yourself ignoring their coldness, their lack of interest. You make excuses for why they're silent, why they aren't showing up for you. These are all pretty big red flags that you're stuck in that chasing pattern, not building a healthy, balanced connection.
Okay, so let's say someone listening recognizes those signs. They see themselves in that description. What's the next step? What do you actually do instead of just continuing to chase? Because stopping feels scary, like giving up.
It absolutely feels scary because it feels like you're letting go of control or letting go of the connection entirely. But here's the core strategy, and it's surprisingly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
The very moment you stop chasing, that's often when people start noticing your absence.
So silence speaks volumes.
It really can. It's about shifting your internal question. Instead of constantly asking, why don't they want me? You need to flip it. Start asking yourself, wait, why don't I want someone who clearly doesn't value me?
That's a huge mental shift. From seeking their approval to, approving yourself first.
Exactly. It's about prioritizing your own self-worth. It sounds simple, maybe, but putting it into practice, that's the challenging part.
So what does that look like practically? What replaces the chasing behavior?
Okay, so you replace chasing with a few key things. First, silence and emotional detachment. Now, that doesn't mean being mean or cold. It means detaching your emotional well-being from their actions or responses. You're taking your energy back.
Okay, detachment. What else?
Second, you focus that energy on your own growth.
Yeah.
Seriously, all that time and mental space you spent chasing, pour it into yourself. Your hobbies, your goals, your health, your friends, things that build you up.
Right, reinvesting that energy.
Third, setting boundaries. Getting clear on what's acceptable to you and what's not, and actually communicating or enforcing those boundaries. And finally, actively working on reclaiming your self-worth. Reminding yourself that your value isn't tied to whether or not this one person gives you attention. It's about centering yourself again.
That makes sense. But I can hear people thinking, okay, I step back, I detach, I focus on myself. But how does that make me attractive? Doesn't pulling away just push them further away? It feels like playing games.
Yeah, I get why it feels like gameplay.
Yeah.
But true detachment isn't about manipulation. It's not about giving up on connection. It's about giving yourself back to yourself.
Giving yourself back to yourself. I like that.
And what happens is when you're calm, when you're centered, when you're not desperately chasing, you actually become more magnetic. Confidence is attractive. Peace is attractive. Panic and desperation, not so much.
So it's the self-assurance that draws people in.
Exactly. There's real power in demonstrating that you respect yourself enough to walk away from something that isn't serving you, to do it with dignity. In a way, your silence, your focus on your own life, it communicates your value much more effectively than constantly trying to prove it ever could. It signals self-respect. And that is inherently attractive.
That's a really powerful reframe. But okay, there's recognizing the signs, there's understanding the strategy, but then there's the really hard part for some. When do you know it's just time to let go completely, to walk away for good?
Yeah, that's the toughest call sometimes. The source material offers a pretty clear, if maybe painful, indicator. If the only reason they seem to stick around was because you were chasing them, well, then they were never really there for you in the first place.
Ouch. So if the dynamic only existed because of your constant pursuit,
then the connection itself wasn't really mutual or genuine. It was sustained by your effort alone. And the moment you stop that effort and they disappear, it's revealing. But here's the liberating part. Once you do stop, once you truly step back and they fade, you start to realize something pretty profound.
what's that?
You weren't actually losing them. You were finally finding yourself.
Wow. That's huge. So the takeaway here seems to be, from today, stop the chase. Start choosing yourself instead. This whole deep dive really highlights how that energy, the energy we pour into pursuing someone who keeps pulling away, it's not just wasted. It's energy we can and maybe should redirect back into our own lives, our own growth, our own happiness.
Absolutely. And maybe the final thought to leave you with is this. Love isn't really something you should have to beg for. It's something you become.
Something you become.
Yeah. Think about what it means to truly embody that self-worth, that confidence from the inside out. Instead of looking for it in someone else's validation, let that idea sit with you.